Build 42 being released on stable and now the default launch option for players jumping into Project Zomboid marks the introduction of Project Zomboid's first major update since Build 41 was released in December 2021, almost 5 years ago, and it introduced a whole heap of new features, new map areas and overhauled existing map areas. In this video I explore whether Build 42 has been a hit, a miss, or whether it could be a mixture of both. Let's get into it. Now, I love Project Zomboid. I've amassed over 1100 hours in the game, which I appreciate is small fry numbers in comparison to some of the community, but I'm not approaching this video as a new player. I'm approaching it as someone who gets this game, what it's about and how it's developed, at least to some extent. And let's be clear here, for me, Project Zomboid is the creme de la creme of zombie survival games, with its depth, immersion, lore, world, detail, and just incredible ability to sucker you in and then, inevitably, in the end, kill you. But with the title of being the best, most immersive zombie survival game comes expectation, and with expectation comes hope, or disappointment. So let's explore Build 42 together. Its good bits that leave you amazed, and the bits that perhaps fall a little short. Whilst this isn't a full Project Zomboid review, I'm sure if you've not yet bought it, or jumped into it, you'll still get value from this video. The question that PZ has to answer every time it does an update is how do we make this game even better? And that has been answered in so many ways here. First, let's take our hats off to the world design, and the overhaul that's taken place to much of the map that we know and love. It's taken sometimes somewhat beige, predictable, easy to navigate and identify towns, which have some copy and paste assets with repeated use, and has just completely revamped them. I've spent a chunk of my time in Riverside exploring the new take on the town, and it, in its design, really is breathtaking. Every house that you enter is different, it feels lived in, it makes me want to explore every room just in case I miss some loot or some environmental storytelling. I used to, sometimes without thinking about it perhaps, walk into a house and know exactly what I was going to find, what the layout was, what containers would be in which room, and where the difference in houses was perhaps the wallpaper being different, and that being the only identifier for them. Now, that doesn't happen. Or at least in the towns and areas which have received their update, this doesn't happen. Exploration feels like you're exploring. Sometimes I'm looting for the sake of looting, partially because I'm a total apocalyptic hoarder, admittedly, yes, but also because I want to see what I can see what stories I can find, see what layouts I haven't seen, challenge myself to clear buildings without knowing what I'll find in them. There's a reason to explore beyond just the I need this thing now, and the reward for doing so is that you feel immersed. You're in houses that feel lived in. You're going through someone else's stuff, and the reality of the apocalypse can quickly dawn on you as you enter that kid's playroom or that nursery. In addition to the redesign, there's also the introduction of skyscrapers in Build 42, with Louisville now not just being tightly packed houses and shops, but skyscrapers too, adding vertical exploration to the game. Speaking of vertical exploration though, one thing that I do feel has happened as a result of the overhaul to these areas is that I feel like the small gap between what we can see and use from Build 41 has widened a little here. This can all probably be summarised with ladders, those one-tile little things that allow you to climb up or down them. At least that's the case in real life, but not in Zomboid. And this would feel less like an issue if the new map revamp didn't literally introduce areas which you can't either get to or get out from without them. This feels a little like the art team didn't have a conversation with the programming and animation team here. There doesn't appear to have been a, yeah, we're sticking in loads of ladders to the new map areas, can you make sure the player can use them? They've just seemingly created incredible map areas without thinking about how they can be accessed or used. This is an area that it sort of feels like the devs are comfortable with just leaving to modders for now, and leaving things to modders is something I'll be revisiting later on in the video. In addition to the changes to existing map areas, there's been a huge addition to the map too, expanding the map to the west, introducing 2 completely new towns, expanding and building on Ekron, and introducing a number of individual points of interest, including the likes of the Abandoned Orphanage, Sunderland Hills Sanatorium, and Irvington Speedway, to name but a few. Again, these areas have been lovingly crafted and put together. They make you want to clear them of the undead, explore them, and see what secrets they hold. The towns in Irvington and Brandenburg offer a different experience to the other towns in the map and from each other, each being distinctive in its design, with the main road splitting Irvington in half pretty much, and Brandenburg being a more compact railroad side and riverside town with some awesome looting spots. Again, the world design, like the overhaul of existing areas, is incredible, rewards exploration, and does a fantastic job of making each town, road, building, and house feel unique. The world design, bar the ladders, gets top marks from me. The Zomboid world is excellent. Now, next up, another new introduction as part of Build 42 has seen the introduction of a wider variety of animals, and the introduction of the likes of animal husbandry, tracking, butchery, and a new fishing mechanic. Let's start off with that new fishing mechanic. Fishing on Zomboid is now a bit of a vibe. There's nothing quite like taking a break from cracking some zombie skulls and standing on a pier as the sun rises or sets whilst fishing. The new mechanic means this isn't a set it and forget it, but something you need to actively play as you tussle with a fish or a tin can, more often than I'd like to admit in my experience, and reel it in. It's rewarding though as you skill up and as you catch bigger and better things. Animal husbandry and butchery I'll tackle together, just don't tell my animals. But again, this takes that late game from being just survival to expand it to trying to become self-sufficient. It requires stacks of patience to build your own pens, but you can take over an existing farm, and that'll take away some of the more frustrating aspects, like animal transport, out of the equation. Build your own pens, though, and you need to think about location. Animals can be spooked by Zeds, and can inflict damage on player-built structures like fences and walls. Now, animal transport is perhaps some of the more frustrating elements of the animal husbandry introduction, especially with some of the current bugs which are still affecting the game at the time of recording. Yes, that trailer did teleport, and no, this on-screen footage has not been edited. I also understand why we're constrained to the relatively small animal trailers for the sake of balance, but if you want a field of cows, considering you can only take 1 plus a calf at most at any one time, you'll be making a fair few trips. Just as well the trailers don't try and kill your vehicles, hey? Then, once you've reared your own animals, perhaps it'll be slaughter time, and then you butcher them. Again, a really cool mechanic that makes you feel suitably rewarded, at the higher skill levels at least, for your farming efforts. One thing that is a bit of a struggle is getting your animal, mainly large animals like cows, to a butcher's hook. Yes, they're massive in terms of encumbrance, so you can't use vehicles to transport them once they're dead. You can, however, carry that 800-pound beast and have it sat on your lap as you drive home. So there is that. Again, in terms of the depth and late-game activities you can do, this is really well thought out and rewarding for the most part. But there are some aspects that I find lacking. Not the skills or activities themselves, but perhaps the crafting possibilities that you can't do with your byproducts. So let's talk crafting, and during this I'm going to talk about cheese. Build 42 introduced expanded crafting. The general idea here was to aid late game gameplay and enable players to go truly off-grid and self-sustainable. And this is perhaps one of the aspects of Build 42 that I've tussled and struggled with a little more. First and foremost, the UI. Introducing a window that needs to take up a large amount of screen real estate in most games isn't a huge issue. But when you're playing a game with a genuine zombie threat to your life, and, generally speaking, it's recommended to keep your wits about you at all times, a large window just to, I don't know, do some simple crafting, like sawing a large quantity of logs, or a large window to build a wall that used to be something you could right-click to do, just momentarily kicks me out of the immersion of the game, as I have to trawl through windows to get what I need. I appreciate that there are still some aspects you can do in the context menu. You can saw a log in the context menu, but if you want to saw many, you'll need the crafting window. Cooking, for the most part, also appears to be context menu centric, but it is this sort of mishmash of different things in different places that could make the game harder to navigate for new players, and can be frustrating for existing players too. There's also aspects that just don't work, like the recently used or frequently used options in the build menu. I was building many fences, and not once did the order in which things were displayed change. So the UI is a bit of a mess, and a bit of a chore. That's one downside, but crafting has been expanded. You can now nap a wide variety of things, carve a wide variety of things, build and create custom weapons, for example, too. So there are aspects that I like, but earlier I mentioned cheese, and this is where I feel a little bit disappointed. We talked about animal husbandry and how you can have your own animals. You can milk your cows, and you can even churn butter. But you can't make cheese. This just isn't in the game. Cheesecloths are, but cheese isn't. You can go through the troubles of the new farming system, which is a lot more punishing than before, takes a heap of time, and requires you to plant the right things in the right seasons and look after them in the right way. But after you've taken all that time to grow those tomatoes, you can't make tomato sauce, and you can't make tomato paste. You can bake bread with your wheat. You can make a pizza base. Do you see where this is going? But once all of the in-world cheese is rotten, and the last bit of tomato paste is gone, you can't make a pizza. You can't take your cow's milk, make cheese. You can't take your tomatoes and make paste, and this means that you can't make apocalyptic pizza. You may think this is getting really focused on my inability to do a thing, but the pizza or lack thereof summarises my issue with the expanded crafting systems. They aren't expansive enough. I can't do simple things that I'd really want to do in my apocalypse. I just want a pizza, for God's sake. But more seriously, this is an issue for me. It's shown also in things like glassmaking, where you can spend a serious amount of time levelling up the skill, getting to the point where you loot or craft your crucible, craft your furnace, find your pliers, glass blowing pipe, and you're all excited about the things that you can now make out of glass. But the things you can make out of glass aren't unique. It's jars, bottles, and glasses that you can loot from any kitchen, and glass panes for windows that you can crowbar out of a house down the road. No player-crafted specific chandeliers, or the windows that match all of the others in the orphanage that you'd like to base up in. And it's the same for a lot of the expanded crafting and wider skills. They're a huge time sink and investment, but for me, the reward to do them isn't really there. I'd have loved to have seen some more custom things that you can craft using these skills, that you can only craft. That are a hallmark of a dedicated blacksmith, or a dedicated glassmaker, or a potter, but for these skills they don't seem to exist. Other skills do it better, so napping with napped products that are man-made and hard to find, carving with bone knives and maces and necklaces and beads, so there are skills where the expanded crafting appears to be, well, expanded, but then there are others which just feel neglected. Perhaps, again, for modders to hopefully take a hold of and make worthwhile, which I'm sure they will, but it's just a touch disappointing for me that there's not more in the vanilla game here. What do you make of the crafting? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now, moving on from pizzas and glassmaking, the next thing I want to talk about, and heap a load of praise on because I really do think it's an excellent change, is the shooting mechanics. Overhauled as part of Build 42, guns now have an aiming system that makes sense, that feels immersive, skill-based, and rewarding to use. Guns pre-Build 42 were generally ill-advised and a bit of a lottery, especially at the lower skill level, and just didn't strike that satisfying feeling of firing some lead through the skull of your zombified neighbour who always used to mow his lawn at 7 AM on a Sunday. Now, though, you pick up a gun, one of the many newly introduced guns as part of Build 42 perhaps, and regardless of skill level, you can have fun firing rounds off at your zombified work colleagues. Even at a low skill level, shooting feels fun and it feels responsive. Yes, you're never going to get ready or not levels of gunplay immersion in an isometric zombie survival game, but this is something Zomboid now does really well. Top marks for this change. And don't be as afraid to get those bang bang sticks out and have some fun, folks. Just perhaps in the countryside first before you take on Louisville. When you couple the new shooting mechanics with tracking, another new skill introduced as part of Build 42, you can lose countless hours out in the wild stalking deer, refining your aiming, and hunting for your dinner. The tracking mechanic works really nicely and rewards a quiet, deliberate approach, pulling in aspects of foraging, where you can find things like animal dung, and then expanding on this to show hoof marks, broken blades of grass, and scent to get a feel for the direction that your prey has taken off in. Again, the introduction of the tracking alongside the refined gun aiming mechanics really does elevate the gameplay. So, decision time. Build 42. With everything that's been introduced, the incredible map work with the world glow-up, the frustrations of no ladders, the awesome introduction of skills like animal husbandry, butchery, tracking, and more, but the frustration that I can't make an apocalyptic pizza and there isn't, for me, enough player-made options for some of the skills, such as glassworking and pottery, and with my battle scars from the unstable branch, is Build 42 hit or miss? It's just a big fat hit. Yeah, it's imperfect, but aren't we all? But it adds more than it takes away, it amazes more than it frustrates, and it immerses more than it pushes me away. If you're sat there and you haven't yet bought Project Zomboid, the best time to buy it was yesterday, the second best time is today. It will eat you up and it will spit you out. It will welcome you with soft toys, raccoons, and a raccoon that is a soft toy, before beating you around the head and making you fall into a pit that you can't escape from. But it really is the best zombie survival game out there. Let me know what you think of Build 42 down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please do like the video. Subscribing helps a small creator like me out so much, so please do subscribe whilst you're here. And I'll see you on Monday for my Let's Play, and on Wednesday for another apocalyptic video. Catch you later.